All right. Sorry about that. Let's see if anybody comes in. I wouldn't blame you if you don't. Trust me. Um, and more importantly, let's see if this mic thing works. I didn't do anything. I did not touch anything, but it works. Okay. Well, thank you, Mitch. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. That happened to me once before, but it didn't. It started off where it didn't work. But I have a Yeti mic, and hallelujah. All right. Well, thank you so much. You guys are the best. You really are. Very nice of you guys to to stick with me through that because I would have been long gone if I were you. Okay, so KJ wants to know about Dennis Allen. I haven't heard anything about Dennis Allen. Um, and it doesn't mean that the 49ers aren't interested in him. But, um, when you think about Dennis Allen, I've been talking about Jeff Ulbrich, um, talking about Matt Eberflus, Gus Bradley. Yeah, I've talked to Dennis Allen a lot in the past. There was a time when he was, very interested in coming to the 49ers is after the whole Raiders thing. So I think he would welcome that opportunity to come back to the 49ers. Um, but just I haven't heard his name yet. And who knows? That could that could change. I'm checking my phone here because I do have um, a few questions out, and so I don't know that anything will get any news while we're on this, but if I do, you guys will be the first to know. But the one guy that yesterday was kind of interesting. Steve Wilkes interviewed for the Falcons. Jeff Ulbrich interviewed for the Falcons as far as defensive coordinator, and um, Ulbrich is a guy that I thought initially whenever Robert Saleh got fired as a Jets head coach and everybody was wondering about Robert Saleh, I think people were thinking that Saleh would come to the 49ers midstream. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. It didn't happen. But the guy that I always kind of kept an eye on through the whole process was Ulbrich, because unless he turned the Jets around to be a playoff team, he wasn't going to get the permanent head coaching job. And then anybody they hired after Ulbrich wasn't going to keep him around as a defensive coordinator. I do think the time is right for Ulbrich and his family to come back to the 49ers. But as of now, nothing, at least nothing that is out there publicly. Yeah, I don't see Rex Ryan. I don't see that happening. I would think that Rex Ryan's time has kind of come and gone. He seems to be pretty good on TV, and that kind of seems to suit him pretty well. Um, so anyway, for those of you who have returned, thank you very much for your patience. Um, I don't take that for granted. Was there anything that I was talking about when I was rudely interrupted by this mic that anything I need to repeat? I don't know. Um, yeah, so good question about um, John Fossil and Darren Ritzy, two established special teams coordinators. Absolutely. Last we heard it was Hargrave. Yeah, I was just talking about Hargrave, where I don't see the 49ers making a big play in free agency for a defensive lineman. When they've had success, it wasn't that. When they had success, it was drafting defensive linemen, drafting multiple defensive linemen. Heck, even the year 2017, where they swung and missed with Solomon Thomas in the draft, but then yet later they do get DJ Jones. So I think the best formula is take a defensive lineman early, take a defensive lineman later. And I think maybe, I don't know if I'm repeating this, but I kind of feel like defensive line is the only position where if you need somebody, you can target that position. I don't think it works with offensive line. I don't think it works with any other position where, hey, we need a wide receiver. Let's just take the best wide receiver on our board when it's time to pick, or any other position. I would say that with offensive line too. You just don't take a player at a position to take a player at a position. The exception very well could be defensive line because so many defensive linemen play in a game. 8, 9, 10 defensive linemen can play in a game. And as long as that player has something, whatever it is, whatever the reason a team is attracted to a defensive lineman, whether it's the way he plays the run, the way he rushes the quarterback, but doesn't play the run, like you can find a role where a defensive lineman can be a valuable resource for you. And it doesn't have to be a guy who plays 45 snaps a game. It can be a player who plays 12 snaps a game, but you find those specific roles for a defensive lineman. Okay, question about targeting Dahlman in free agency. Again, it's free agency is for the rich. Free agency is for the teams that have, a hole to fill. What I mean by the rich, teams that have a whole lot of salary cap room. I don't see the 49ers going out in free agency and getting a starter, like an established starting offensive lineman. As you saw on Monday night, as we see repeatedly around the NFL, there are more teams that have needs at offensive line than don't. And the 49ers, believe it or not, are probably one of the better offensive lines in the league. Certainly top half of NFL offensive lines. So when an offensive lineman becomes available, a starting offensive lineman who is not, beyond the age of 32, become available, when a starting offensive lineman becomes available, he's going to get paid. That's why I think Aaron Banks is going to get paid by some team. So that's where I feel there. Probably the best route for right now the 49ers have, when you're talking about the center position, Drake Nugent, Matt Hennessy, Jake Brendel. They could also draft a guard center combo, second or third round. If that player is special, then he has an opportunity to start year one. But I just don't see them getting a starting caliber offensive lineman, or I should say a starter, in free agency, just because of the cost involved with that. The one guy I wonder about is Jalen Moore. I think he's a pretty good swing tackle for the 49ers. Is he somebody who's going to have an opportunity to become a starter somewhere else? Probably not. So that's what I kind of see there. Yeah, Richard says, doubt Kyle would start a rookie center. If he's good enough, yes, but it's very difficult to find a rookie who can step in and play. Dominic Pooney is, the exception. Let's see, what else do we have here? The mic is still working. Hey, that's a big win right there. That's a huge win for me. One area, we haven't talked too much about it is quarterback. No, Brock Purdy's going to be around. But what the 49ers do at backup quarterback this year, Brandon Allen be back. Joshua Dobbs, will he be back? I kind of doubt that. So Tanner Mordecai is the only other quarterback other than Brock Purdy, who's under contract. I almost said Brock Purdy isn't under contract, but he is. He's just not going to play on his current contract. Mr. Joe, Kyle had a chance to draft Mahomes. Yeah, look back on it. How many teams had an opportunity to draft Mahomes and none of them did it? Um, what do we got here? Oh, did I mention maybe you guys weren't around when I was talking about the draft and talking about the defensive line? If I'm repeating myself on the last one, let me know. But when I look at this draft, Senior Bowl's coming up in a couple weeks. I think the Senior Bowl is February 1st, so that means it would be the week before with the practices, and the practices are the main thing. But Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, Shamar Turner from Texas A&M, those are guys to keep an eye on at number 11. I think I saw somebody say uh, trade back. Yeah, there we go. Trade back. I don't necessarily disagree with that at all. If there's nobody clear cut there and you have the opportunity to trade back, I, I often think that that's the best way to do this. Um, James Foster. Hey, thanks, James. I appreciate that. Um, very, very nice of you. I do appreciate that. Have I heard anything on Drake Jackson? I haven't, other than um, I think he's still not close. I believe it was his left knee. He had the patellar situation. The 3 sacks to start off the 2023 season against the and boy, James, that's out there, man. It's teal on my screen, so that pops at me. But thank you so much for that. But Drake Jackson is a guy who will be entering the final year of his contract. He, um, hasn't produced. Had the 3 sacks against Pittsburgh, but that's getting him back would be a key for them. But at this point, I think with that, the issues that he's had physically, it's nothing the 49ers can depend upon. It would be like found money in your seat cushions if at this point, if Drake Jackson is able to get healthy and make a contribution for the 49ers this season. Um, uh, let's see, did someone get health effects would need to be hits? Yeah. Um, yeah. The question about trading up. If you trade up from 11, so now you're getting into the high rent district. You're giving up a lot of picks. And think of, the 49ers with, I believe they have 10, they're expecting 10 draft picks, including compensatory picks. To take away all those chances to get, you know, depth, special teams guys, um, a tight end, an offensive lineman or two, a defensive lineman or two, a linebacker, who's good on special teams, a safety, um, you know, on and on and on. I just think you're stripping away all those opportunities where not only can you get young guys who can compete for jobs and the guys who don't make the 53 man, you can keep them around more than likely on the practice squad and continue to develop them. Also, when you use those draft picks, you're getting guys under contract for 4 years on very manageable minimum salaries. And so teams need, especially a team like the 49ers, with so many high priced guys, you need players, a lot of players on their rookie contracts because it just drives down the cost. And then you can go ahead and afford, to pay your big money guys the big money. um, so a question about, do I think Fred or George get extensions this offseason? I don't think Fred will. Fred's under contract for a couple more years. But George, I would think they would give him a contract extension. For Warner, let me just take a look at what his situation is. Yeah, he's signed through 2026. So typically, I could see them $17 million base salary. I could see them restructuring that deal, giving him, the more guaranteed money, lower his base, create salary cap space if they need it. So I don't think Fred Warner will get a new deal because he's 2 years out, but definitely I think Kittle is. The question that the team has to ask with Kittle, and it's a tough one, is, he's getting up there now. He's, what is he, 30? Um, He'll be 32 in 2025. He's entering the final year of his deal, shows no sign of slowing down, but that's one that is worth watching as far as George Kittle. So I would say that Kittle definitely a better chance of getting a contract extension than Warner, just because Warner has this year and one more left. Thank you, Netherlands, for the question, and for the comment. Do I think they come to London this year? I've been trying to find out the answer to that. Um, Berlin is potentially a landing spot because the 49ers do have a road game scheduled for Indianapolis. The Colts were designated, was that yesterday, as the team that will have a home game in Berlin. I don't think the Colts would play either of their three division rivals in a neutral site like that. So that leaves the 49ers basically with a 1 in 5 shot of being the team that goes to Berlin. Um, Mexico City is also a possibility. I've heard that. I know some people talked about, like, uh, Aztec Stadium is still going through a refurbishing. From what I understand, that will be completed later in the season, and the Houston Texans, who are the team with that home game, from what I understand, that game is going to be scheduled later in the year to allow that game to happen. So take that for what it's worth. Haven't heard anything specific about that yet as far as that goes. Whoa, Stephen D, thank you so much. Um, Very nice of you. Appreciate that, Stephen D. Where are you from, Stephen D? Um, Thoughts on the safety position? I feel like it was a liability uh, this season in tackling poor angles. My daughter's texting me about something. Um, yeah. Uh, let's see here. Okay, Stephen D. Again, thank you, Stephen D. Feels like poor liability tackling, poor angles, etc. Perhaps Hufanga gets pinched out. Love your content. Been a fan of yours. Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, Telling, no doubt, that Malik Mustafa replaced Jair Brown in the 49ers starting lineup when Hufanga was cleared to play. Also, I think, telling that Hufanga stepped right back into the starting lineup. Leads me to believe the 49ers would like to re-sign Hufanga. What that cost is going to be, I don't know. What I think is it doesn't reflect well on Jair Brown because, he was a starter late his rookie season, had an interception in the Super Bowl, and at that point, man, you'd like to see Jair Brown take that next step if you're the 49ers, and that just didn't happen. And it just seemed, I'm with you, Stephen D. It just seemed like the tackling, the angles, the coverage, it wasn't there. The fact that Malik Mustafa basically aced out Jair Brown for the starting role tells you what they think of him. So, 49ers have to figure that out. I could see them investing a mid-round draft pick in a safety where I think that they need maybe some more diversity with their defensive backfield. Is it just seems like all of those guys are, big hitters, not necessarily guys in coverage. I think they can use a fourth round pick on a coverage safety, somebody who might even be able to play the slot, maybe might be able to play, a nickel back in a pinch, or just have more coverage skills to give the new defense coordinator, whoever he is, the option of using the safety in the slot, in coverage, playing center field. I just think it gives more flexibility to the defense if they could add a true coverage safety. I know, there have been guys, who I've talked to in the NFL who say, "Hey, you know what you call a safety who's a really good cover guy?" The answer is you call him a cornerback. Well, the game has evolved, and I do think it's important to have somebody, who's not kind of that cookie cutter mold of what the 49ers have with the three guys that finished the season, Browns, Mustafa, Hufanga. So, yeah, I do think it's not a huge priority as far as the safety position. But going back to what we talked about earlier, when you have that many draft picks, you can pick off a lot of different spots. And I do think that it's kind of back to where I was last year, where I thought the 49ers should take like a Mikey Sandstrell, who the Washington Commanders took. Somebody who is a playmaker, big play guy, coverage skills, all that. So, certainly as the draft gets closer and I start to do more prep on that, that's kind of a position that I would definitely be looking at. Yeah, it's Stephen D from Jersey, from Northern Illinois. Does that mean you went to Northern Illinois? Does that mean that you went to Jimmy Ward's alma mater? Um, yeah, Hufanga can make a team friendly deal and come back. Absolutely. Oh, Brock Purdy is here. Well, let's just we should ask Brock what he's doing. Uh, Niners faithful, Tig was better under Wilkes. Here's a question: do you think in this upcoming season does not go well, Shanahan and company will be on the hot seat, or will Jed never get rid of him? Well, it depends. It depends on why it doesn't go well, but I don't get the sense that it's like this all or nothing, um, win the Super Bowl or they're out, or make a dramatic improvement or they're out. Um, I just think that the locker room, the organization, ownership certainly uh, appreciate kind of the way that operation runs, and especially coming off of so much dysfunction with head coach, general manager, locker room. Despite the 6-11 record and the Devondre Campbell situation, um, typically what I've seen in the what's it now been 8 years of Shanahan and Lynch is that the organization runs very well, and those two are seen as very competent, beyond competent. Um, Again, I know that opinions among the fan base vary, but I'd say very generally speaking, not even generally speaking, I'd say across the NFL, the 49ers are kind of held up as not the gold standard. That's obviously Kansas City with the way that operation runs. But the 49ers are seen as an ideal with the coaching staff, the player acquisition. And let's face it, I mean, over, you know, why haven't they been able to win it all? Uh, well, because of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, at least two of those last 5 seasons. So I don't get the sense that ownership is fed up and this is a win or else kind of season. But again, you never know until you see how it unfolds. Um, there have been times where the record is the same, 2 years, record would be the same, but you just feel like one, there's no chance that those people in power positions can get it turned around. You could have whatever, a 5-12 record, and in one instance, there's no way they have a chance. There's no way they have a plan. And then another 5-12 with the general manager and the head coach working in tandem. They have a plan and they have a chance to turn it around. So um, that's what I would say there. Okay, so a lot of questions here. I'm just kind of, um, why would York get rid of Shanahan? Yes, agreed. What would if there's no why would Ward be possible contender for sign and trade? Um, I mean, there's not sign and trade isn't a thing in the NFL. That's an NBA thing. Um, yes, so I talked about improving the D line through the draft. D line through the draft. D line and free agency have brought the 49ers um, Javon Hargrave. Um, I mean, not anything about these guys, but Yetur Gross Matos, Leonard Floyd. They traded for Chase Young. They traded for Malik Collins. They've signed Jordan Elliott. Um, they just haven't had a whole lot of success. You know, they've had the success they've had, guys like Cleveland Furl, um, Arden Key. So they've tried a lot. Some of them have worked, but the problem is when you sign a free agent like Leonard Floyd, I think he was the 10 million a year or whatever he is, 12 million a year. You There's more risk involved in signing a free agent because you're paying him a lot of money, relatively speaking, to a draft pick. Whereas if you miss on a draft pick, almost regardless of where he is, it doesn't have that kind of long-term impact on the salary cap. Um, DeKalb, yeah, I drove through DeKalb. Is it DeKalb or DeKalb? DeKalb. Drove through there last year. I drove cross country. Let's see here. Jimmy G's hometown. Isn't Jimmy G's hometown? Is it Arlington Heights? Rolling Meadows High School in Arlington Heights, right? Um, let's see here. What do we got? Do you expect Salah to be named DC? Do I expect it? Certainly wouldn't surprise me if he's named defensive coordinator. Of course, Salah has those openings, of course, that he's interviewing. Already interviewed with Jacksonville and has scheduled interviews coming up with the Las Vegas Raiders and the Dallas Cowboys. Is he going to get any of those jobs? I would doubt it. So I guess ultimately, as we sit here today, yeah, he's probably the guy that would be the front runner for that. Uh, what else do we got here? If the Flyers really want to be the best, why would they hire Sorensen? Um, well, maybe he's better fit to be special teams coordinator. Nick Sorensen played a lot of years in the NFL as a core special teams guy. When he got into coaching, it was initially as a special teams coach. He has been a special teams coordinator for 1 year in the NFL. So um, everybody I've talked to, nobody with the 49ers has told me, um, the guy, yeah, he's not a good coach. He's considered a good coach. It just kind of seemed like, obviously he was. There are upgrades for defensive coordinator out there, no question. Guys like we've talked about, all the names we've mentioned: Sala, Ulbrich, um, Eberflus, Dennis Allen, Gus Bradley. All those guys have done it. Special teams is a little bit more iffy as far as I was going to say vague. Like it's more vague, like what makes a good special teams coach. Um, Brian Schneider was considered a really good special teams coach, but clearly a change had to be made just for change's sake. So we'll see. I would think I would think that, in my mind, Sorensen would be, the front runner for the special teams coach. Um, no, and somebody asked about Gross Matos. No, he wasn't bad, but I'm just saying the amount of money they paid for him and the fact, I mean, he didn't play much. He did have the one defensive player of the week. There was something I saw that, I think Salah's meeting with the Raiders tomorrow, but I'm not quite sure of that. What will they get from Jordan Mason? He's scheduled to be a restricted free agent, so we'll see how that turns out. There's another question. Um, we haven't had any personnel embarrassments since Reuben Foster. Yeah, I think they learned their lesson there. Remember, that was the very first off season, right? Couple months into John Lynch. Um, I think uh, they got what's the right word? Seduced by Reuben Foster. If you talk to Reuben Foster, uh, very engaging guy, personality. Um, but yeah, man, he could not get out of his own way during his time with the 49ers. Okay, so a lot more questions. I won't be able to kick through all of them, so I'm just gonna um, kind of go through here. Assess something. Elijah Mitchell's contract is up. Um, let's see here. What else? Oh, Deebo Samuel was if Deebo was close to a record like that, Kyle would be trying to get it. I don't know what that's in reference to. Yeah, I think they've, if we're talking about is that a Jawan Jennings reference? Deebo Samuel's interesting. I was on with John Lend. John Lend has a daily YouTube show, and he asked me, he said, "I don't think Deebo's coming back. What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I asked John Lynch about that specifically 8 days ago, and he said, yes, he's coming back." One thing that Lynch and Shannon Lynch always talks about, he wants to treat players like how he would have wanted to be treated as a player. Kyle Shanahan is known to be kind of brutally honest. They just don't tell guys what they want to hear. I think at this point, if they don't bring back Deebo Samuel, that strips away at the credibility that they've worked so hard to achieve in the 8 years here. So I just don't see there being a salary cap reason why Deebo Samuel doesn't come back. And I don't know what they could get for him in a trade. He has 1 year left on his contract. He's kind of a specialty type of player. Everybody around the league knows how much Kyle Shanahan likes him. And I guess you could say this with about any player, but I think there would be a perception. Well, if the 49ers are willing to trade or want to trade Deebo Samuel, what does that say about where he is? Especially when Brandon Ayuk, you don't know what you're going to be getting from him as he comes off the torn ACL. So I think that'd be a signal like, well, another team, well, we'd like to have Deebo Samuel, but he's kind of a limited player in the sense that, he's never been known as far as a good man, a guy who can beat man coverage. Deebo Samuel has been very effective for the 49ers in this role that has been kind of carved out for him. But I just don't know how many teams would look at him and say, oh, we got a perfect spot for him, while also factoring in how much Kyle Shanahan likes Deebo Samuel. And if Kyle Shanahan's willing to part ways with him and not get a whole lot of benefit on the salary cap because of it, and probably not get a great draft pick because of it, then we can even lower our price as far as what they would give the 49ers for compensation. Hope that makes sense. So that's why I think that I think Deebo Samuel's coming back. Let's see here. I think that's probably as good as we're gonna get. The mic is still on, huh? That's pretty impressive. Um, yeah, could see Debo being a mid